I spent years treating for my specific relationships, and really for that person to get their shit together. And so 7 years ago, I stopped treating for the specific relationship I was in and trying to fix it or abandon it or whatever, and I simply started treating for a healthy relationship. Where did I get all my information about relationships? TV and the movies. Oh, those are really good examples, don't you think? Cinderella, that's exactly right. And they all do the falling in love part. They never do the after the 18 months part. What I realized and discovered during that whole time, and then moving out onto my own, was that I had to clean up my own side of the street. Damn. I mean, really. It is annoying to be conscious. Our job is to clean up the way in which we see and be in our own lives, is to absolutely begin to take 100% responsibility for our part and 0 responsibility for theirs. See, when we started to get ready for snorkeling, I said to Karen, I don't think I'm going to go. And she was like, what? What do you mean you're not going to go? I said, well, I can't see. I don't wear contact lenses. If I take my glasses off and I put on a snorkeling mask, what am I going to be able to see? I can't see anything. And Karen said, come on, why don't you try? I'll hold your hand. Now, I really want to tell you that in the past, I might have said, don't tell me what to do. I might have said, I don't need your help. I can do it by myself. I might have said, I don't want to be that vulnerable. It's scary. And what I said was, okay, I'll try. That hour was so sweet. I didn't feel controlled. I didn't feel manipulated. I felt completely loved.
The courage of a dreamer, the innocence of you, the failures and the foolishness that lead us to the truth, the hopes that make us happy, the hopes that don't come true, and all the love there ever was. I see this all in you. Part of the human heart. You are part of all who took the journey and managed to endure. Such tenderness, the ones who felt so sure, the ones who came before you, the others yet to come, and those who you will teach it to. Learned it from. You are part of the human heart. today. Part of the human heart.
Yeah, Mark. My man.
Hey. Thank you so much, Mark. Part of the human heart. Each and every one of us, part of that heart. Each and every one of us. Yeah, and isn't that an amazing thing to celebrate today? How our hearts are connected and how we experience that. And yeah, happy Valentine's Day. What a lovely day to be back with you guys and to experience and to share that love. So our annual theme is a world that works for everyone. And we have been building on this topic. And last week on the monthly theme, Reverend Karen talked about awakening to our spiritual magnificence. And she talked about the unique value and preciousness of each individual as an individualized expression of the one. And how important it is for us to know that about ourselves. But do we know it about each other? Especially those people with whom we share a household. Yes, sometimes seeing their spiritual magnificence is a little more difficult. Yeah, sometimes it's true. I don't know. I don't know which sometimes is more challenging, to see our spiritual magnificence in the mirror or to see it in the person who's sitting across the table from us. Yeah, so we want to talk about that this morning. This morning on Valentine's Day, it's an opportunity for us to talk about relationships, romantic love, that personal primary relationship. Now, we celebrate Valentine's Day today, and it has a long and interesting history. There's actually no agreement whatsoever where Valentine's Day comes from or who is actually Saint Valentine's. There's actually 3 known Valentine martyrs, and then there's an entirely different legend that has absolutely nothing to do with those 3. And the legend goes that there was a priest or bishop named Valentine during the reign of Claudius, the Roman Emperor Claudius. And Claudius had decreed that all of his soldiers, all of the men, they couldn't get married because he didn't want them thinking about wife and children at home. He wanted them focused on being soldiers. So he flatly refused to let any of them marry. St. Valentine thought this was a terrible thing, and as a Christian, he secretly married any soldier who wanted to get married to his beloved until Claudius discovered that this was going on. And so Claudius hauled him before the court and threw him into jail and said, "You'll be executed for not following this decree." Of course, this was while also the Christian persecutions were going on, and so another reason to persecute the Christians. So while Valentine was in jail, he was visited by the daughter of the jailer, Julia. She was blind, but she would come and distribute food to some of the prisoners. And she and Valentine got to talking, and Valentine got to sharing faith with her and speaking about the love of God with her. And through all of these conversations, apparently Julia was healed and received her sight back. And this didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference to her father because the execution was going on as planned. And so the night of his execution, he wrote her a note. And the note said something like, "Please, Julia, don't forget all of the teachings that we have shared. Don't forget that you live in the love of God. Signed, your Valentine." And so this is the story, the legend of how St. Valentine's Day became the story or the holiday that it is today. And so this was way back in the 300 CE, and in the 1400s and the 1500s. Oh, and you'll see that it was really about agape love. It was really about spiritual love. It was the love that this man had for this young woman who came and fed him, and it was the teachings about the love of God. But in the 14th and 1500s, this whole new thing emerged in the Christian, basically in the Knights, and that's what we call courtly love. And so courtly love is where the knight is madly in love with a woman he can't have. And so it's usually the queen or some beautiful maiden who is promised to somebody else. And the more unattainable she is, the more in love he is. And this chaste love is only shared in sonnet and poem and song. And if he truly moves his beloved, she might write him a poem back. So this went on in the 14th and 15th century until somewhere along the line, Hallmark got a hold of it. No, actually, way before that, all of these beautiful poems and love things became sentiments that were sent in cards. And yes, as we know it today, we send our Hallmark cards to our beloveds. Of course, we can send them to our parents and our friends and our children, sharing that love. But primarily, right, it's for our beloved. It's an opportunity for us to share and experience and celebrate, that thing we call relationship. Oh, that really fun thing we call primary relationships. So today, we're talking about through the prism of love, looking through the prism of love, seeing with the eyes of love and being in that in our lives. This comes from this quote from Ernest Holmes. Through the prism of God's love, I recognize the oneness of God and humankind. Right, and this is very much what Karen talked about last week, recognizing that oneness, recognizing the truth of that oneness within each and every individual and each and every expression. And the fact that each of us are unique expressions. And so we can think about this as a prism. If we think about the light of the divine as it is flowing through us, right, comes in that one stream of light. And that light is the same as it moves through each and every one of us, but it branches out into this beautiful rainbow as it moves through the prism. And this, when we see this and know this about each other, it is this profound sense of agape, the unconditional love that sees the truth of who you are, that absolutely recognizes not only your preciousness in the one, but also the beautiful rainbow that you are in life. Yes, and then we invite each other into our homes and into our daily living, and sometimes that agape love is not so easy, is it? Sometimes it seems to me it's much easier for us to have agape love for people we don't know very well, isn't it? Those people that are a little at a distance from us. We haven't run into any of their foibles or any of their idiosyncrasies or any of their weirdness. We haven't run into the fact that they look at life a little differently than we. We can just observe them from our lofty spiritual position and say, oh, I love everybody. I love humanity. I just am not certain I love you for breakfast. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know. You do not have to raise your hand if this sounds familiar to you. So, many of you have been around for quite a while, and you've heard me talk about this before. I avoided ever doing a class, a service, a talk, or anything about relationships for probably the first 20 years of my ministry. Because, quite frankly, I was convinced that I didn't know how to do them, that I was actually very bad at relationships. And actually, somewhere along the line, I developed the belief that I was clearly going to mess up every relationship I was ever going to be in. So I practiced what has become commonly known as serial monogamy. Not necessarily a bad thing. We can be in a monogamous relationship for 50, 60, 70 years. We can grow as relationships grow. We can grow. But I had developed the belief that I didn't know how to do relationships and that I was going to mess them up. Why did I develop this belief? Well, I just had to look into my past. Yes, knowing laughter of personal experience. Well, so part of the problem is, of course, is that we are utterly unschooled, I think, in relationship, and especially with things like Valentine's Day. In Valentine's Day is this, I think, this habitualized notion that we are always going to be madly in love with the person that we're with, that we're always going to feel our hearts go pitter-patter, and we're going to want to spend the days with that person the way that we did in the first few months of falling in love. Yeah, right. And then what happens? Somewhere about 18 months, right? It's right about 18 months. Sometimes it's 8 months, sometimes it's 2 years, but statistically, it's right about 18 months reality sets in. Well, you're a lot different than I thought you were. I didn't know you did the laundry that way. What do you mean you're going to fold the towels in thirds? Or whatever it is, right? All of a sudden, this person that we thought was the epitome of synchronization, we were completely in sync, totally in oneness, we were absolutely in love with how everything perfectly fit together, doesn't fit together so much anymore. So lots of studies have been done about this, and there is the recognition and the understanding that the point of falling in love is to bring us together. That's the point of falling in love. The attraction, whatever the pheromones are, whatever it is that brings us together, the point is we fall in love because we are drawn to each other. We're drawn together. But it's not what's going to keep the relationship going. It's not designed to keep the relationship going. There's something that then begins to emerge. And that is this thing called our primary relationship. That person that we love, that thing that is now going to unfold. Well, and it unfolds in very interesting ways. Let me demonstrate. So let me demonstrate. Mark, come up here. Mark and I, we've seen each other over the table, and we've gone, ooh, let's fall in love. Let's do a dance, shall we? We do a dance. What dance shall we do? Okay, so Mark's going to dance. Mark's going to dance, and because I feel all one with him, I'm going to dance with him. Okay, and so then time goes on, and what happens? Oh, wait, my mother joins us. Deirdre, come up here and be my mother. My mother joins us, and she has very different ideas about how the dance should be, right? And so now we're dancing because who have I brought with me? I've brought my mother. Oh, and then what's happening is then I look at Mark, and what I see, I need 3 more people. Come up, 3 more people, right here. What, 1, 2, I need a third person. Please, somebody, quickly, come up here. I need a third person right here. Okay, and now I see all the other people I've ever been in relationship with, and they're all dancing too. And here we are going, oh my God, what happened? Thank you. And then the other part is that you have to realize, right, is while my mother's over here coming out of my mouth and I'm seeing all of those other relationships, the exact same thing is happening on the other side. So we have his parents or her parents over there, and then all the other people that person's ever been in relationship with. The bed gets very crowded. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong, okay? I know how this goes. So what happens is, as long as all of that's going on, we're actually not in the state of love. I'm not exactly sure what the state we're in. Shall we call it reactionary, projection, being triggered, unconsciously playing our parents out and not realizing it, not even seeing the person that's actually in front of us, but seeing somebody that they looked like 3 relationships back and having the argument from, 10 years ago with this person that's standing in front of us. Yeah. Ernest Holmes says this: as all is mind, and as we attract to us what we first become, until we learn to love, we are not sending out love vibrations. And not until we send out those vibrations can we receive love in return. Yeah, and so usually what we send out, if we're not paying attention, is that we don't send out love vibrations. We send out vibrations of need or control. We send out vibrations of, well, you aren't what I expected you to be, so I better fix you so that we'll be happy. Right? Whatever those are. Can you tell I'm speaking from personal experience? So I spent years through all these serial monogamy that I went through. I spent years treating for my specific relationships, and really for that person to get their shit together. If we are to know the honest truth, right? Oh, gosh, I hate bearing my soul up here. But it's true, right? That's what we have a tendency to do, and who I wanted them to be and what I thought it was going to be. So 7 years ago, I decided, well, that clearly hadn't been working for the last 20-some-odd years in the relationships I'd been in. And so 7 years ago, I stopped treating for the specific relationship I was in and trying to fix it or abandon it or whatever. And I simply started treating for a healthy relationship. I started treating to learn about love and to be that love, to send out that love vibration in a healthy relationship. The problem is, of course, I had absolutely no idea what that meant or what that looked like. I certainly was not modeled a healthy relationship in my childhood. So I began, over the course of my childhood, my young adult life, where did I get all my information about relationships? TV and the movies. Oh, those are really good examples, don't you think? Cinderella, that's exactly right. And they all do the falling in love part. They never do the after the 18 months part. They never do that part. No, So I started to do a lot of treatment about healthy relationship. And I actually realized, or I actually made the decision that it didn't matter whether it was in the relationship I was in or not. That person, this relationship could be the healthy relationship, or it might not be the healthy relationship. That was simply not even a part of the conversation anymore. What I did that treatment about was to be in a healthy relationship. And after about 3 or 4 years of doing that treatment, I simply stopped doing it. I forgot about it, which usually means to me that something is lodged in our consciousness. When we do long-term treatment about something that is affecting a long-term change in our lives, we do that treatment diligently, and we can do it for weeks or months or years, and then somewhere along the line we forget to do it. And what that means is it's now starting to work. We've now owned it. It's starting to work. And it took time for that treatment to begin to work and to continue working in my life. Unfortunately, that relationship did actually end. It wasn't that relationship that was the healthy relationship I was looking for. And what I realized and discovered during that whole time, and then moving out onto my own, was that I had to clean up my own side of the street. Damn. I mean, really. It is annoying to be conscious. It is very annoying to be conscious. Really, I don't get to have a temper tantrum about the other person anymore. I can't make them wrong. I can't point the finger. I can't blame them anymore because I have to do my own spiritual work to become aware of the times when my mother is speaking out of my mouth, to become conscious of the times I'm being triggered by an old story that doesn't have anything to do with the person in front of me, to see all of the ways in which I am unconscious and not being the love vibration. When we don't do this, we're doomed to projection, reaction, and a cycle of blame and shame in our relationships. And it might be the same relationship that we do that cycle over and over again for years, or it might be a series of relationships that we do that cycle with over and over again. And so what we have to do is to begin to stand in that place of love, to know the truth about ourselves and to know the truth about another person, and to find that place where we see it differently. It's really interesting. I'll never forget reading about this study they did years ago. They did a study. They had, hundreds of couples that they brought in, and they videotaped them for 3 to 5 minutes speaking about their relationship. And they did this over a small period of time, and then they followed those people for 5 years. And after having videotaped them, they could parse those videotapes down to nanoseconds as they watched the faces of each person as they were talking about their relationship. And they could predict with 100% accuracy who was going to still be together in 5 years and who wasn't. Virtually 100% accuracy. Those relationships that were not going to survive, and that did in fact not survive, on one or both parties' faces, even if it was for a nanosecond, would come across their face contempt, scorn, blame, or shame. And if they saw those repeated in that conversation, they could predict that those relationships were not going to survive. Why? Because in those relationships, it's always about the other person. I have contempt for the other person, scorn for the other person, blame the other person, or I have shame because what I think that other person says or does or thinks about me. And when we're in that, we're not in our love vibration, are we? When we're having those kinds of experiences. And so our job is to clean up our side of the street. Our job is to clean up the way in which we see and be in our own lives, is to absolutely begin to take 100% responsibility for our part and 0 responsibility for theirs. Yes? How many of us want to take responsibility for their part? Well, if you would only do such and so, we would be happier. Well, I really think that you should see it differently or be different, and then we'll be happy. Right? That's taking responsibility for their part. That's their part. That's their spiritual growth. And our spiritual growth is to be able to see clearly, to see with the eyes of love. Ernest Holmes says this: if we would look for a God of love, we must look long and deeply into each other. We must look away from the differences until we penetrate into the unity of the whole. Love alone reveals love. Hate but hides the gleam. Hate, contempt, scorn, blame, shame, projections, all of these things hide the gleam of love. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about this is, and I'm as guilty as the next person, this is not about loving someone's potential. Because, when we're loving someone's potential and we see who they can become, if they would just become more spiritually mature, we're not actually loving who they are we? We're not seeing them. We're not looking deeply into the truth of who they are. We're seeing who we think they should be, who we think they could be. An executive coach said to me one day, one of the most powerful things that anybody has ever said to me. I didn't actually like hearing it at the time, but it has served me well since then. She said to me, Petra, people will show you who they are. You should believe them. Yeah, wow. And it's not a judgment, as it is really simply allowing someone to be who they are. You see, I think what happens for us, particularly us in our spiritual path, is we do one of two things. Either we focus only on the white light that's coming in. Well, we're all the same. I can see the truth of who you are. I know that you're a child of God, and that's the only thing I'm going to look at, despite the fact that the relationship doesn't work. I'm going to simply see the truth or the love about you. Or we go to the other end, and you see, all we look at is each other's rainbow. Well, I don't really like the way that your color purple is showing up. I think you have way too much red, and I think that your yellow needs a little tweaking. Right? And so what we do is we tend to focus on only one side or the other. And what we know to be true, everything in the science of mind resolves itself into a paradox. We are, as Karen said last week, we are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience. So the white light of truth is the spiritual truth of each and every one of us. And yet each and every one of us, unlike a prism, each and every one of us refract that light differently. Every one of our rainbows looks different. Every one of them. And some of our rainbows make beautiful colors together, and some of them don't. Some of our rainbows clash horribly. And do you see, if all I'm doing is focusing on the white light and saying that's the truth about us and not noticing that our rainbows are clashing, I can settle for a relationship that doesn't work for a really long time. And if all I'm doing is trying to fix the rainbows so that they somehow will go together, I will never notice that the truth is there is some deep and profound reality in which we are always connected. And so when we do our spiritual work, do you see, we actually recognize that both of these things are simultaneously true. And it's okay for us to simply focus on the light and to recognize the love that is, and say our rainbows don't fit. Or to recognize that light is shining through in rainbows that complement each other. They may not be exactly the same. We know they're not going to be exactly the same because every one of them is unique. But they may absolutely complement each other. And when we can do this, when we can see that actually both of these things are true, do you see, in that moment, our relationship turns into a spiritual practice. Turns into a profound spiritual practice. Now, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because I decided that at some point I was going to have to start talking about relationships. I was going to have to start figuring some things out. I did a lot of work, a lot of treatment. The Spirit really moved in a lot of ways in my life. And so one of the things that came to me that I've spent a lot of time exploring is this notion of karma versus dharma relationships. And I think this is a really important and interesting thing for us to begin to look at in our own relationships. So a karma relationship is a relationship in which we are working out our issues. Wow, you just behaved just like my dad. Ooh, I'm really mad at you now. Or, oh, you look just like the partner that I had, 3 people back. Or whatever that is. In a karma relationship, that person that we attract is the perfect key to our lock. So, for instance, I grew up suffering from abandonment issues, and so what did I do? For years, I attracted people that were emotionally unavailable to me, and I continually felt abandoned. and I made them wrong for it. Do you see? They were the perfect the perfect key to my lock. And until I was willing to do the work on my own side of the street to recognize that no one can abandon me because God can't abandon me, and I'm not going to abandon myself, and heal that issue within myself, you see, I was going to keep bringing people into my life with whom I could work out that issue. Oh, well, you got to get to look at your abandonment issues once again. Are you going to heal them or not? Is it going to keep being about that person? Or am I going to do the work that I need to do? So in a karma relationship, we're working all this stuff out. And we're constantly being triggered and having an opportunity to deal with our reactions. If and when we go through that long enough that we actually do the work, we do the work to become that person who sees with love and is willing to be 100% responsible for what happens on their own side of the street, then we have a dharma relationship. And a dharma relationship is no longer about two people simply working it out. Usually what happens, of course, is that eventually it sucks the relationship dry because there's nothing new in it anymore. They're totally fixated on each other. Somehow you're going to fix it for me, or somehow you're going to make it better. A dharma relationship is actually when two people share the journey. And they've chosen to share that journey because there's a profound connection. Yes, I can see I can see with the eyes of love that each and every person has that light, and each and every person is lovely and beautiful and valuable. But my rainbow is actually going to fit with certain rainbows, and others it's going to clash. And so when we find those people with whom that really begins to fit and mesh together, and we're no longer having to work out our issues, now, do you see, we can move side by side into the world, mutually supportive, mutually inviting each person into their greater yet to be, without having to have an opinion about what that is, without being frightened about what that might be, and really feeling that love and support ourselves. Now, some relationships, long-term relationships, stay in karma relationships the whole time. Just go around the circle, around the circle, around the circle, around the circle, around the circle. And some of us, we go into one karma relationship after another. But as we do our spiritual work, our long-term relationships can absolutely grow into a dharma relationship. Because I've been willing to take 100% of responsibility for my own side of the street. And I'm with someone who has decided to take 100% responsibility for their side of the street. And we don't take responsibility for each other's side of the street. Our long-term relationship can absolutely grow into that. Or we can do enough work on ourselves that we attract that into our own lives. So I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you about something that happened for me in Bali, snorkeling in the Blue Lagoon. So I wish this was a picture of us. It's actually not. But I did actually find it. And I thought, oh, that looks good. So the first week, as you know, Karen and I got to take the group of people to Bali together, and then Karen came home to be with you, and I got to go for the second week. And at the beginning of the second week, somebody asked me, so what was the most special thing about the first week that you were in Bali? What was really the big deal for you? And I said snorkeling in the Blue Lagoon. You see, when we started to get ready for snorkeling, I said to Karen, I don't think I'm going to go. And she was like, what? What do you mean you're not going to go? I said, well, I can't see. I don't wear contact lenses. If I take my glasses off and I put on a snorkeling mask, what am I going to be able to see? I can't see anything. Not only will I not see the fish, but I don't know for how many of you who wear glasses or contact lenses or whatever, when you don't have them on, it's a little disorienting, isn't it? I mean, I'm the kind of person I have to put my glasses on so I can hear you. Okay, right? It's completely true. I don't know what to say about that. And so the idea that I would be snorkeling around in unfamiliar territory without my glasses on was a little more than I wanted to do. And I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do this. And Karen said, come on, why don't you try? I'll hold your hand. Now, I really want to tell you that in the past, I might have said, don't tell me what to do. I might have said, I don't need your help. I can do it by myself. I might have said, I don't want to be that vulnerable. It's scary. And what I said was, okay, I'll try. That hour was so sweet. I didn't feel controlled. I didn't feel manipulated. I felt completely loved. And I noticed that because I was willing to try, I actually saw the fish better than I had expected. Somehow with the way the water makes everything bigger and the goggles, it was like, wow. When she would point something out, I could see the color. I could see that there were things there. And the fish, there were so many of them, they were actually like literally virtually nibbling on our fingers. And so they were really close. And then she took me over to the coral, where as the coral rose closer to the surface of the ocean, of course, that made the fish come closer. And it was such a sweet hour. And there was none of that old stuff, right? None of that. Just love. Yeah. And I thought, yeah, that's side by side. Do you see? That's side by side. And I did what I needed to do to take care of myself, and Karen did what she needed to do to take care of herself so that we could have this experience together. And I didn't allow all that old garbage to get in the way. Ernest Holmes says, love alone shall discover the heart of God at the heart of each person. Love alone shall reveal the self to the self and find enthroned in the high citadel of the secret place of God in our own heart that beneficence which embraces the whole world. You see, and from that place of love, I'm no longer afraid. And the more that we have that experience in our primary relationships, the closer we can let other people come, because we won't need for them to stay a stranger for us to love them. Do you see? Now agape love is available to us. As people move into our lives, move in and out, and so the quality of our personal relationship begins to open our hearts in a whole new way. And so now our prism becomes a light. It becomes a light in the world. Then our love and our relationships becomes part of the prism of the love that is God pouring itself through all creation, through each of us, and through the way we love each other. Thus, we are creating a world that not only works for everyone, and not only works for ourselves, but actually also works in our most intimate relationships. And each and every one of us, we deserve that. Yeah. Let us pray. Just inviting you to go within, recognizing that there is that one infinite love, that one infinite light that is pouring itself through each and every one of us. It is the light of love that shines through all creation, shines in each of our hearts, in our beloveds, through this community, through all people and all beings everywhere. And that light bursts through us into these glorious and beautiful lives rainbow of color, joy and hope and possibility. And so this morning, what I affirm and declare for each and every one of us is that we ourselves, we live in healthy, whole, happy, love-filled relationships. That we live from that spiritual truth and we see the light and we be the light ourselves. I declare for each and every one of us this morning that we wake up, that we are willing to be conscious and to clear out anything that stands in the way of our rainbow pouring itself out in its beauty and magnificence. And we see that in the beloveds in our own life. Love calls to love. The vibration of love lifts and shines in our relationships. And for each and every person here this morning who is not in a relationship in this moment, I affirm and declare that healthy relationship is now attracted by the very love and light and life that each and every one of us is. That wholeness, that joy is a magnet for that whole and happy and healthy relationship. And because we are sharing that love with each other, that love pours out into the world, is a light, is a blessing, is a joy. Accepting these truths now, I am so grateful. So grateful to know that this is so for each and every one of us. I accept it. I expect it. And I let it be. And so it is.